£60 million plus £8 million in potential add-ons is what Tottenham are going to have to pay to get their top target. A Brazilian wonder kid is the newest name on Big Ange's transfer list, and meanwhile, we're again fighting it out with Bayern Munich for an exciting international player. More of this in today's Tottenham Hotspur news on the Spurred On podcast. Guys, thank you so much for watching and for all your support. Please do give the video a like. Press subscribe if you haven't already. Just to remind you, on Mondays I'll be doing all the Tottenham news from over the weekend, and on other days I'll be doing Tottenham transfer news, but also Premier League transfer news added on at the end. So if you want to get some of that in your inbox every day, do press subscribe and the bell button for the daily content. Also, if you want to become a member, £1 a month helps me support making this content for you. All the details in the description box below. But let's get started. Tottenham Hotspur and Bayern Munich are battling it out for Stuttgart winger Chris Furick. He is actually a really exciting player, and apparently only has a €23.5 million release clause. He's German, obviously. He has 4 caps for the German national side. He plays left wing, but he's also played in central midfield. So once again, some of that adaptability that Big Ange loves. He's tall, tricky player, very skillful, loves a nutmeg. In fact, tries the nutmeg so often, really reminds me of Dele Alli. I don't know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Dele Alli, for me, often played the nutmeg a little too much. It was becoming a little bit transparent. But Furick likes that as well. He's got a great touch, lovely finisher when he gets inside, as in cutting in from the flank. Tends to play off the left, cuts in the flank, loves to hit a right-footed shot into the top corner. Very Sonny-esque when it comes to that. He's also, despite being quite tall, quick enough and clever enough to get himself out of tight spaces with the ball. And I think most importantly, when it comes to why he's probably on Johan Lange and Ange's list for possible recruitment, he doesn't mind, in fact I'd say he loves, getting to the byline with the ball and cutting it back, which we all know is kind of the mainstay of Big Ange's philosophy. Lovely, close control, good football, get your forward players to the byline, cut it back for the likes of Richarlison or Sonny to finish, or of course the other forward at the back stick. Okay, some more transfer rumours around Spurs as well. Quite a lot has come in this weekend. Next up, we have apparently begun contacts with Monaco for their Brazilian fullback Vanderson. He's had 2 caps for the Brazilian national team. I really like the look of him, actually. Very brave and strong in the tackle. So in terms of his defensive ability, maybe a little bit stronger than Pedro Porro, actually. But he uses his body well to protect the ball too in defensive situations. However, and this will be the key as to why Spurs are interested in him, pacey, skillful, good finisher when he gets in the box as well. Loves to hit it with his instep, gets it across the keeper. Also gets in at the back post, as I mentioned before, a key part of Big Ange's tactics. He's also got great vision, isn't afraid to play a through ball, keeps his head up, and good crosser as well. And like I said at the top, puts his body on the line in the tackle. He also makes good late runs into the box, which is something I think Pedro Porro's had a great season, I really do. But one thing that Destiny Udogie did a lot more than him was get into the box late. He even scored a goal like that, whereas Porro prefers to kind of, I think, hang out at the edge of the box to maybe get a chance of hitting a long shot, which works for him. Of course, he's got a great long shot, great strike on him. But if you remember, in his first season at Spurs, under Conte, remember that goal he scored at Southampton where he made a late run into the box, the ball bounced to him about kind of 12, 13 yards out, and he just rifled it into the top of the net. So, I think that's an interesting one for Spurs. Keep your eye on Vanderson. We're very clearly looking for somebody who can help out Pedro Porro in terms of squad depth, especially with the Europa League coming this season. Next up, we are apparently talking about trying to get in Dutch defensive midfielder Mats Vier. If you're Dutch, let me know how to pronounce it. He plays for Feyenoord. He's had 9 caps for the Dutch national team, scored 1 goal for them. Like the look of him. Possible upgrade on Pierre-Emile Højbjerg here. Breaks up the play well, strong in the tackle, very tall, which will help us defensively because, as I've said for so long now, we need players who are going to attack the ball more from defensive set pieces, and maybe Vier can do that. He's comfortable on the ball and able to drop a shoulder and take the ball on the half turn. So that's why I kind of think of him as a potential upgrade on Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. As we've heard all summer so far, not that the weather makes it seem like it's summer, but we are happy to get a number of players off the wage bill, off the books, like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, but we will be looking to replace them, especially if they're players who make that kind of first-team squad. So this is one that doesn't surprise me. We'll be looking at this kind of player. I'll tell you more about the fact that Palhinha seems to be off the list now because he's going to Bayern Munich. I'll tell you more about that later in the episode. So keep your eye on Mats FIFA. Go and have a look at him. Interesting player. Another player who Tottenham are interested in, apparently, according to rumours coming out this weekend, Koni de Winter from Genoa. Now, why is that not surprising? Because good old Fabio Paratici has been on his phone again. We love dealing with Genoa. Obviously, we're trying to sell Jed Spence to them on a permanent deal at the moment. So maybe as part of that permanent deal and with a bit of money extra, maybe we will look to get Koni de Winter in as our fourth centre-half. We know that Tottenham are looking for a fourth centre-half to challenge Romero, Van der Ven and Dragusin. So, Koni de Winter, 1 cap for Belgium. He's young. Brave though, reads the game beautifully. Lovely recovery pace as well. I've seen him make some really good recovery challenges when strikers have been in on goal. His tackling is very strong. Not only good at defending narrow, but also very comfortable defending out wide, which is important because, as we know, we leave our defenders 2-on-2 at the back when we are pushing forward. So we need players who are not only able to have the pace to deal with that, like Mickey van der Ven does, but also who are able to push those players out wide and feel comfortable trying to stop the crosses when they do that. I really like the look of him, and also some examples of where he's got in the box and has a beautiful strike on him as well. Seems to be like, to me, like he might be a part of the next generation of Belgian centre-half quality, taking over from the likes of Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld, who were obviously such fantastic players for Spurs. More news coming out this weekend on Eberechi Eze and the rumours that Tottenham may well be, or not only that he is top of Tottenham's list, but also that Spurs might well be a real possible destination for Eze. Apparently, the player's preference is that he wants to stay in London due to family ties. So that gives us an advantage. And the other news coming out is that his release clause is £60 million on the money, with a potential of 8 million add-ons, which you assume would be for things like qualification for Europe, trophy wins, and Champions League appearances and international appearances, stuff like that. According to Sami Mokbel, Eze has genuine interest from a number of Premier League sides, with, of course, Tottenham Hotspur right up there. I've said it all about Eze. I think he's perfect for us. If we can get him, and if we can stay fit, he could be such a brilliant player for Spurs, and he would take pressure off James Maddison as well. I think if we had a player like that, who we could get the ball to all the time, then Maddison would get more space because defenders on opposition teams, would kind of swarm around Eze because they're so worried about him, because not only can he play a good ball, but he can drop a shoulder, and he's got an amazing long shot, and he has the pace to get past people too. Very excited that we are still being talked about as a possible destination for Eze. Also excited to see how he does in the Euros. I think he'll be a very interesting option for England off the bench if we're struggling in games, and it would not surprise me if we do struggle in some of those games. Dan Kilpatrick, great journalist, check him out if you haven't already. He's saying that Tottenham are indeed, as has been mentioned before on this channel, keeping tabs on both Marcus Edwards and Kyle Walker-Peters because they are former players of Spurs, and we need more homegrown kind of club-attached players for our registration in the Europa League next season. So they're looking for players who will make good squad players to add to the depth, but who also came through the academy. As I've said about Marcus Edwards, what an exciting player, but does he have the quite the right mentality to come back to Spurs after it didn't work for him first time? Let me know in the comments once again what you think of Marcus Edwards. Obviously, maybe some of the biggest news that has come out about Tottenham this weekend, but not a transfer rumour, is that apparently, according to Fabrizio Romano and others, we have reached an agreement to mutually terminate Tanguy Ndombele's contract with immediate effect. This apparently will be announced very, very soon. Recording this on Monday lunchtime, so maybe it already has been announced by the time you see it. But apparently it's an amicable breach of contract. So what that will mean is that we will have had to pay off, if not all of his last year, then certainly enough of a majority of his last year's contract that he feels comfortable leaving the club. After his latest loan at Galatasaray, I know that they've won the league there, but he's hardly played any minutes, and I don't know what you think. I've seen a lot of the video. It looks like he's put on a lot of weight. It doesn't seem to me like Tanguy Ndombele has any interest in his football career at the moment at all. It's a huge shame, a huge waste. One of the most naturally skillful and talented players I've seen in a Tottenham Hotspur shirt. He had everything to become the next Moussa Dembele, and if not more. All the players who played with Moussa Dembele, all of them say he's the best player they ever had. Underrated. He was just so strong on the ball. No one could get it off him, and had vision and could pass. But Tanguy Ndombele had all that and more. He could finish. He was skillful. He could beat a man. He could drop a shoulder. It's just such a shame. It's really gutting. But I do not want him at the club anymore. I think this is the correct decision. Get him off the wage bill. Get him out of the house. By which I mean, obviously, training ground, stadium, and move on. And replace that player, replace the wages with someone else who fits Ange's mould. And I think this is where it's probably worth talking about how important it is to Ange that they are, personality-wise, the right players as well. He's spoken openly about it. He said he would rather take a player who's maybe a drop below the very, very best in terms of natural talent, but who makes up for it with their work rate and their desire and their personality. And I think Tanguy Ndombele is the perfect example of where we have previously gone wrong with that. And we've been giving him 200 grand a week for the last 4 years or so, maybe even a bit longer. And it's time to not make those mistakes anymore. Meanwhile, Troy Parrott, apparently a target for FC Utrecht and AZ Alkmaar in Holland after his performances at Excelsior. Mentioned him a few times last week after he scored that goal for Ireland, and Excelsior were unfortunately relegated, but he scored 2 hat-tricks in 3 games towards the back end of the season. 17 goals and 5 assists in 32 games in the Eredivisie, the top league in Holland. So no wonder other Eredivisie sides are interested in him. What kind of money do you think Spurs could get for Troy Parrott now? He's obviously not played in the first team, but he's proven himself in another league, in the top league in Holland. What kind of money could we get for him? Could we get maybe 7, 8, 9 million pounds for an academy player? Could be interesting. I'd like to see Ange give him a chance. I'm not saying that I wouldn't, but like I've said all summer, if we can get a few people out the door and get those kind of 10 million euros, 10 million pounds numbers coming in, and we can put that all towards some really important signings. Okay, I now have to talk about Neal Maupay. Just because he's talking again about James Maddison. I mentioned last week, after James Maddison didn't get picked for the England squad, Maupay posted a picture of a dartboard with him smiling, kind of taking the piss out of Madders. Maupay's now talked more about his rivalry with James Maddison. He said, from my side, I've got no problem with him. I know when I do things like that, by which I think he's talking about when he mocked Maddison's celebration after scoring. He says, I know when I do things like that and we lose the game, they will come for me. That's fine. I can take it. For me, football is a game, and growing up, I did the same stuff. I don't want to stop now. I'm just having a bit of banter and a bit of a laugh. There's nothing deep. I like to give something, but I can receive as well. It's just fun. I like a bit of banter with my mates. That's just how it is. Just because I'm a professional footballer doesn't mean I can't do it. Now, I just think, maybe there's some element of what he's saying is you can get it. But what I would say is I think you have to be at the very top. You have to be one of the elite players if you're going to then take the piss out of others. Michael Jordan was famous for how much he trash-talked everybody, but he was the best. So of course you can do it. But when you're Neal Maupay, you're an Everton player, but you've been loaned out to Brentford. You go to Brentford, you give it the big one, and then Brentford don't want to keep you. You've never had an international cap. I think steer away from it, mate. I really do. And James Maddison is just a significantly better player than Neal Maupay. So I think he should probably keep his mouth shut. Kieran Trippier has done an interview. Obviously, ex-Spurs right back, played for us in our Champions League final run. Came in when Kyle Walker was the number one, and Trippier made an excellent deputy. His crossing was actually some of the best crossing ability I've seen at Spurs. Very David Beckham-esque. Anyway, he has done an interview this week where he was asked what's his kind of biggest regret in football. And he talks about how his biggest regret in football was the way he left Spurs. He said there was some animosity between himself, Daniel Levy, and Maurizio Pochettino, in that he kept asking Daniel Levy, was he in their plans going forward? And Daniel Levy, I think probably rightly, said, ask Maurizio Pochettino. Now, he said, Kieran Trippier says he went and asked Maurizio Pochettino, and Pochettino said, go and ask Daniel Levy. So I can see why there'd be some animosity there, because that would frustrate Kieran Trippier. But what I would say is, I think at that point, if memory serves, Kieran Trippier had heard already that Atletico Madrid were interested in him. And I think Daniel Levy was probably interested in getting 20 to 25 million pounds for Kieran Trippier because he was our first team player, but he had not a great season that year that we got to the Champions League final. And actually, Trippier has since said that season was bad for him because he played with an injury. So maybe also at the same time, Pochettino wasn't sure of his future because he had been kind of angling for the Manchester United job, and then we'd lost in the Champions League final and we'd made a bad start, and then we went and made a bad start the following season. So things weren't quite right at Tottenham at the time, and maybe what we could have done with was some kind of stronger leadership from both Levy and Pochettino, and maybe we could have kept Trippier a bit longer. Trippier would actually really suit Big Ange Postecoglou in terms of delivery and how comfortable he is on the ball. Okay, onwards, past Tottenham into some more Premier League transfer news. I'll just give you a little bit of update on some of the news that's been happening on the transfer rumour mill this weekend. Man United are expecting a deal to be done for Jared Branthwaite from Everton by June the 30th. Everton still holding out for £75 million. Another rumour that keeps going on. But Man United, I'll talk more about it in a bit actually. The managerial merry-go-round, they are not sure what they're doing now. But speaking of them, they apparently Mason Greenwood has said yes to a move to Juventus. That would be a great move for Greenwood. Obviously, he seemingly cannot play in England due to the personal issues he suffered where he was he went to trial, or he was going to go to trial. He was arrested and accused of abuse, basically. But that was all thrown out. But seemingly his career in England is over, certainly for the next few years. But a move to Juventus could suit him, according to Gazzetta in Italy. Meanwhile, Manchester United apparently made a late approach to hijack Chelsea's deal for Tosin from Fulham. But Tosin, in a very rare show of some kind of respect and loyalty amongst footballers, he kept his word and joined Chelsea. I think I've said it before, I'm fascinated by that move because it just shows that Chelsea not able to really make these huge money deals at the moment, maybe not before that June the 30th deadline. Meanwhile, more Man United news. Nice are open to selling Jean-Claire Todibo for £21 million this summer. If you remember, Spurs fans, Spurs were very heavily linked with Todibo last summer, and actually a lot of fans wanted us to get Todibo over Mickey van der Ven. I think we're all happy that didn't happen. But Man United are amongst the clubs interested in signing him from Nice for £21 million. Well, maybe not a huge surprise because both clubs owned by Ineos. Or at least United partly owned by Ineos. Meanwhile, not only Todibo from Nice, but apparently United also interested in 23-year-old midfielder Kefren Turam, who has only a year left on his contract. That would cost 17 to 25 million pounds. That's according to L'Équipe in France. They're also interested in João Neves, still from Benfica. Apparently they're seriously committed to looking to sign him. Also, Man United and Arsenal are still heavily interested in Bologna's 23-year-old Dutch forward Josh Zirkzee, who's also wanted by AC Milan. He's one of the biggest, kind of most exciting players on the market this summer. Lots of clubs are really interested in him. Interesting looking player. Go and check him out. More news from the Emirates over there in South London. Apparently this weekend coming out that they're interested in Dominic Solanke from Bournemouth. Scored 17 Premier League goals this season. £65 million rated by Bournemouth. I don't think Arsenal fans would be that excited by that transfer. He's also been linked with Tottenham this summer, and I know Tottenham fans haven't really been sold by the idea of Dominic Solanke being our number 9, so I'm not sure Arsenal fans would either. Another rumour that won't go away, Arsenal looking to buy Douglas Luiz from Aston Villa, according to the Mirror, and they've been told they'll have to spend 50 million to get the 26-year-old Brazilian star out of Villa. Lots of people on Twitter this weekend seeing that Aston Villa need to sell before June the 30th because of profit and sustainability rules, and saying that it's a stitch-up that a club doing so well as Villa, who have just qualified for the Champions League, why should they have to sell? It shows that the financial rules are all wrong. Well, personally, I think they're not all wrong because they sign up to the rules. You have to stick to the rules. And if you get to the point at the end of the financial year where you have to sell because you have overspent, that is your fault. That is not the fault of the system. That's my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think. Over to Manchester City and Chelsea. Chelsea have once again made it known that they will offer for Julian Alvarez from Man City in the coming days. Also, interesting because he's only been at Crystal Palace for 6 months, Manchester City have apparently identified Adam Wharton from Crystal Palace as a long-term transfer target. That's according to the Evening Standard. Meanwhile, Everton apparently in talks to sign Armando Broja from Chelsea, 22 years old now, obviously was on loan at Fulham, in a £30 million deal. That's according to Ben Jacobs. Now, it would surprise me if Everton were willing to spend £30 million, or if they had £30 million at the moment. They're in a huge ownership battle. Lots of people interested in buying Everton at the moment, but it's going to take a while for that to go through. So I'm not sure how they're going to spend any big money while everything is so up in the air. Meanwhile, I mentioned earlier about Fulham's Palhinha, and they are now, and Fulham are now in talks with Bayern Munich over a deal for €45 million. It's about £38 million for the 28-year-old Portuguese international. That's according to Sky Sports in Germany. Apparently, they are expecting an agreement to go through in the next few days. And he will sign a contract to 2028 or 2029. And that means for Bayern Munich that both Josh Kimmich and Leon Goretzka are allowed to leave the club this summer as long as a suitable offer comes in. Do you think they might play in the Premier League? I can imagine they might want to. Let's see. Meanwhile, as I mentioned earlier, just moving away from transfer rumours and into kind of managerial rumours, back at Old Trafford, apparently, according to some rumours, Miguel Delaney says that Man United's priority choice for manager is Gareth Southgate, and the fact that he's at the Euros with England is complicating that decision and their ability to fire Erik ten Hag. Ineos apparently intent on getting the first big call of their era right, and they want to make sure that they have the replacement ready before they sack Erik ten Hag. Meanwhile, plenty of other reports saying that Gareth Southgate isn't even on their list. Go figure. Classic journalism. Apparently they did, though, talk not only about, but also to Thomas Tuchel internally. That's according to Fabrizio Romano. And then it was also announced that they had a meeting with Tuchel in Monaco. And since then, Thomas Tuchel, having had a meeting with Sir Jim Radcliffe, Thomas Tuchel has said he is not interested in the Man United job. He wants to take a break from coaching. Now, I have to say I'm not surprised. I think that is a poison chalice at the moment, Manchester United. They are nowhere near ready for the rebuild, by which I mean the whole squad needs an absolute overhaul. I basically think they should get rid of anybody in their squad who is under the age of 25. Maybe apart from Bruno Fernandes if they want to keep him. Sorry, anyone who is over the age of 25. Apart from Bruno Fernandes if they want to keep him. But they need to concentrate on young, hungry players who want to grow with the club. Now, I understand there is a doubt there because can they take on the pressure of Old Trafford? The pressure of all the ex-Man United players who are now pundits and slag off Man United at every opportunity? Well, what I would say is the big kind of Galactico signings that they make and have made for the last 10 years haven't been able to deal with that pressure either. So get a young squad together who can be hungry and can grow together and have a manager in who is going to be patient and be allowed to have the patience to deal with it. And I'm not sure right now that Thomas Tuchel is that man. Another rumour is that Borussia Dortmund's young coach Edin Terzic is a potential replacement for Ten Hag. That could be interesting. That's according to the Sun Sport. Brighton apparently in talks with German club St. Pauli to hire Fabian Hürzeler as their new manager. He's only 31 years old. This is according to David Ornstein. He would be the youngest permanent manager in Premier League history if that goes through. Brighton, always very progressive, very impressive, always have a list of replacements for their managers ready. Nobody really in this country knew about De Zerbi before he replaced Potter, and nobody really knows much about Hürzeler, but I can bet he will play the right kind of football if they do indeed get him in at Brighton. Apparently, Frank Lampard, he wants to return to the management. That's what TalkSport are saying. Not a huge surprise. I'm sure that's probably why he managed the Soccer Aid team last night. Weird stuff. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer could apparently also be set for a Premier League return as Leicester look for their replacement for Enzo Maresca. Obviously, as I mentioned before, big problems at Leicester because they are liable for a profit and sustainability rules punishment as well because of when they broke those rules last time they were in the Premier League. Meanwhile, over in Germany at FC Bayern, numerous potential transfers have apparently been prepared, but sales are needed first. And some of these players who are allowed to be sold, apparently, could interest Premier League clubs. The first one, Matthias de Ligt, centre-half. Spurs were interested in him for a long time, but he's the first one apparently allowed to leave the club. Joshua Kimmich, as I mentioned, Goretzka, Kingsley Coman, what a player he is. I'd love to see him in the Premier League at Spurs. Serge Gnabry as well, and Mazraoui. All these players apparently allowed to leave Bayern Munich this summer if the right offers come along. And finally, some news from FIFA. the money-grabbing people who run this beautiful sport of ours. What a surprise. They are about to put forward and accept a new law that allows leagues to play at least one match from their league campaign abroad. So a Premier League, La Liga, Serie A or League One match could be played in the United States. Now look, I know that NFL games get played at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and Wembley. I get what it is. It's a big money grab. It's to supposedly satisfy the fans in that country. But I don't know, it just seems wrong. Can you imagine a North London derby being played in New York? It would be mental, wouldn't it? I don't know. This is a big talking point. Let me know in the comments what you think of this. For me, I may be a little bit old school, and I think home and away support is so vital in the Premier League. That was proven actually during the pandemic times, when the percentage of teams that won away from home, it went up by nearly like 40%. It was huge. It shows how important the home crowd is, and I think if a game was played abroad, you'd lose all that. But I don't know. Let me know what you think. Obviously, it would be a great spectacle, and the Americans, I'm sure, would do it well. Anyway, that's the end of today's episode. Don't forget, guys, every day I will be doing daily transfer rumours episodes, concentrating on the Premier League, always starting with my beloved Spurs, but giving you all the news. So please do drop this video a like, press subscribe if you haven't already and want those daily videos. Also, if you want to become a member, only £1 a month really helps me out. All the details in the description box below. And you can listen to this as an audio podcast too. Go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Type in the Spurred On podcast, and you can have it every day to listen to while you run or drive or whatever. Hope you had a great weekend. Have a good start to your week. Goodbye.